Hi there, I'm Ben Mankiewicz. Welcome to TCM, where we've got a night of family classics as we continue celebrating the Thanksgiving weekend. Tonight we've got two spectacles from 1962 that were originally presented in the Cinerama process, which turns 70 this year. We begin tonight with a new 4K restoration of one of producer-director George Pal's biggest and splashiest productions. From MGM in 1962, The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm. The picture was shot to be projected in Cinerama, a widescreen process that displayed images simultaneously from three different projectors onto a huge curved screen. The first Cinerama films were mostly documentaries and travelogues shot specifically to showcase the technology. But MGM made the leap to produce full-scale features in the new process. George Pal, as many TCM fans know, is an important figure in cinema history, a pioneering director and producer in animation and special effects. Pal's idea here was to tell the Brothers Grimm story in a visually spectacular way. Wilhelm and Jacob Grimm were real-life brothers. They lived in Germany during the early 1800s. Together, the Grimm brothers published and collected oft-told stories from all around Europe. For example, Tom Thumb, a Brothers Grimm fairy tale, had been a character in English folklore since the early 17th century. Pal envisioned telling the brothers' story while at the same time telling some of the stories they curated, bringing them to life with song, dance, animation, and a visual flair that really could only come from George Pal. For the film, Pal directed the special effects as well as the three stories within the movie. Henry Levin directed the live-action framing sequences featuring Lawrence Harvey and Carl Boehm as the brothers. Cast also includes Claire Bloom, Yvette Mimieux, Walter Slezak, Jim Backus, Terry Thomas, Buddy Hackett, Barbara Eden, and Russ Tamblyn recreating his role as Tiny Tom Thumb from Pal's 1958 picture called Tom Thumb. One final note. We're showing the film tonight in the Smile Box format, which recreates for modern flat screens the effect of seeing it on the curved Cinerama screen. From 1962 in a stunning 4K restoration with Oscar-winning color costume design, The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm. When The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm appeared in theaters in 1962, it was the first narrative feature film presentation exhibited in Cinerama. The restoration you just saw included an overture and prologue that were dropped after the film's original 1962 roadshow release. After the overture and the MGM logo, but before the titles, there's a 2-minute sequence depicting the Napoleonic Wars, segueing into the brothers hard at work writing stories. For the restoration, that battle scene no longer existed intact and had to be reconstructed from original negative and black and white materials, requiring the combination of 9 separate strips of film. Brothers Grimm was finished after but released before our second Cinerama spectacular tonight, How the West Was Won, which we have coming up later. But first, a new documentary detailing the restoration we just saw. Rescuing a Fantasy Classic is up next on TCM.
TCM and Fathom Events present the 75th anniversary of It's a Wonderful Life, returning to cinemas December 18th and 21st, featuring insight from TCM.
These days, watching It's a Wonderful Life over the holidays is an American tradition.
For more information, visit fathomevents.com.
It was up. We had to jump out a damn plane. I was so raw and real about it. I skipped ingenue right to Deadly Killer. It wasn't Hollywood smacks that you saw in movies. This was a real, I'm gonna knock you into next week. We weren't in the magazines, we weren't centerfolds. It was guerrilla filmmaking at the cheapest.
I want want you to suffer.
She was a powerful force on the screen. She's fearless.
She tore the movie industry up.
I think I started a movement.
The plot thickens. Here Comes Pam, hosted by Ben Mankiewicz. Available now on Apple Podcasts and anywhere you listen to podcasts. Visit tcm.com/podcast to learn more.
We're casting off again for your next great adventure. It's the 2023 TCM Classic Cruise, November 6th through the 11th. Join us aboard the Disney Magic for 5 unforgettable nights. Travel from San Diego to Cabo San Lucas and Ensenada, Mexico. Movies and magic await. The 2023 TCM Classic Cruise. Staterooms go on sale soon. Sign up for our pre-sale now to reserve your room of choice. Visit tcmcruise.com for more.
You'll find that I go ahead with what I start.
You do, and it'll be the biggest mistake you ever made, you Texas brush popper.
There's nothing phony about John Wayne at all. I mean, John Wayne was John Wayne.
I'll never forget the first time I met him. I walked into the Bat-Jack offices there at Paramount Studio, and I went to the secretary and told him who I was, and be seated. Well, the next thing I knew, the door opened, and here he was, filling the entire doorway.
I'd worked with Duke quite a bit. In fact, I worked for his company.
Andy, of course, had been a family and part of the group. His father was, one of the group of actors that worked in a lot of Duke's films. And so Andy was part of that organization. He called me one day, he said, come on over to Paramount, I want you to meet John Wayne.
In 1962, Duke was doing this terrific script with Maureen O'Hara, and he also knew that I wanted to be a director. And he said, okay, Andrew, it's your turn. So that's when I stepped up and directed my first John Wayne movie.
Andy got his opportunity to do a movie with John Wayne, McClintock.
McClintock was just great. A great thrilling experience. I thought, here I am directing Duke.
I'd never been on a set like that before. His sets, the ambience, the whole atmosphere, and of working with him was just marvelous.
I got 20 head, 1 of any other brand on the Mesa Verde. I'm not hollering.
Some of us haven't got all the money in the world. Some of us ain't old and tired and feel like being put upon.
You interest me, young Ben. Go on.
He had the energy. He just bounded with energy. He was always the first person on the set.
Don't say it's a fine morning or I'll shoot you.
And he loved it. And his enthusiasm just carried over.
He also was a straight guy, very honest. He'll tell you what he thought right to your face. If he didn't like something, well, he'd let you know.
I come close to killing you a couple of times when we were younger. Saddens me I didn't.
He was a very sensitive, a very tender man. And he loved his family. He dearly loved it.
Good night, Dad.
Good night, son.
And that's just a partial indication of what kind of a person he was. I just loved him.
Out of wine, there comes a lot of great ideas.
With TCM, the conversation around movies is always free-flowing.
Quintessential Scrooge. Michael Caine, yeah.
The TCM Wine Club brings more stories and personalities to your table.
It's all Harpo. I really
Pairing incredible wines with great classic movies. Join now and receive 15 wines, including 3 exclusive movie wines for an incredible value.
Seeing The Wizard of Oz on the big screen, it was like I was in the closest seat possible.
It literally took my breath away.
Raise a glass with your favorite cast of characters. Go to tcmwineclub.com or call 1-844-WINE-TCM.
Hi, I'm Ben Mankiewicz. Welcome back to TCM's Evening of Family Classics, made using the Cinerama process, celebrating its 70th anniversary this year. Both of these Cinerama features we have tonight are from 1962, so this is their 60th anniversary. During the 1950s, movies were going head-to-head with television, and they battled for the entertainment dollars of millions of Americans. Movie studio executives and theater owners were convinced TV could mean the end of their business. And they weren't wrong to be afraid either. Movie studios lost roughly 70% of their profits between 1946 and 1952. Television was the main culprit. Hollywood responded by making bigger movies, epics, adventures, sweeping period romances, the kind of grand stories you couldn't get at home on your 19-inch Zenith Chesterton console TV. MGM's The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm from 1962 was shot to be projected in Cinerama, a widescreen process that projected images simultaneously from 3 different projectors onto a huge curved screen. The first Cinerama films were mostly elaborate documentaries and travelogues shot specifically to showcase the technology. By the 1960s, though, MGM was looking for narrative feature films to produce in the new process. We just had the meticulous 4K restoration of The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm. Up next, we've got the TCM premiere of a 40-minute documentary about the film's extensive restoration. It's from 2021, Rescuing a Fantasy Classic. Directed by Harrison Engel, this is a well-paced deep dive into how Cinerama restoration specialists David Strohmeyer and Tom March worked miracles. The original 1962 Cinerama materials on the Brothers Grimm were long considered hopelessly faded, water-damaged, and therefore unsalvageable. Strohmeyer, March, and their team used state-of-the-art digital tools to join the 3 panels used in Cinerama seamlessly. Each panel, of course, had different degrees of fading, so careful scanning and digital color correction was needed to make them match. The multi-channel audio was remixed to 5.1 stereo. Even some flaws in the original film were fixed by the team. No matter your level of expertise in film restoration, this short doc will dazzle movie lovers because it really celebrates what other movie lovers are capable of accomplishing. From 2021, here's Rescuing a Fantasy Classic. David Strohmeyer and his team spent a year and a half restoring The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm. When it first appeared in theaters in 1962, it was one of the first narrative movies ever exhibited in Cinerama. By using 3 different projectors all synced together, the film was projected onto a huge screen that curved around much of the audience. It was the IMAX of its day, but surely felt like a much bigger deal. It's harder today for technology to dazzle us. We expect it. For moviegoers, attending the roadshow engagement of The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm was an event with reserved seating and printed programs. Audiences often dressed in their Sunday best. Coming up, we've got another Cinerama classic from 1962. A restored version of How the West Was Won is next on Turner Classic Movies.
Classic Film Festival returns with restorations, anniversaries, and full tilt celebrations. It all goes down April 13th to 16th. Land your pass December 8th. Visit tcm.com/festival. With TCM, the conversation around movies is always free-flowing. The TCM Wine Club brings more stories to your table. Pairing incredible wines with great classic movies. Join now and receive 15 wines, including 3 exclusive movie wines for an incredible value.
I was in the closest seat possible.
It literally took my breath away.
Go to tcmwineclub.com or call 1-844-WINE-TCM.
Hi, I'm Ben Mankiewicz. Welcome back to TCM and more of our extended Thanksgiving celebration of family classics. The movies we have tonight are special. Both turned 60 years old this year, and both features were made using the Cinerama process, a widescreen presentation of movies that merged 3 different projections onto one huge curved screen. Moreover, we're also commemorating the 70th anniversary of the Cinerama process itself, which was used throughout the 1950s primarily to showcase travelogues and documentaries. That began to change in the early 1960s, and the films on our schedule were two of the first narrative features to commit to Cinerama. Earlier tonight, we had The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm, which premiered in the summer of 1962. Up next, How the West Was Won, released overseas late in '62, then in the U.S. in February of 1963. Cinerama expert David Strohmeyer, who directed the Brothers Grimm restoration in 2021, did the same for How the West Was Won in 2008. The original film was a production of vast proportions, a big, sprawling story about how settlers conquered the American West over half a century, spanning nearly the entire continent. It's a story well suited to the ultra-widescreen, 3-camera Cinerama format. How the West Was Won features a huge cast, an impressive ensemble of 24 Hollywood stars supported by 12,000 extras. Headlining are some serious heavyweights: John Wayne, Henry Fonda, Jimmy Stewart, Gregory Peck, Debbie Reynolds, Richard Widmark, Carl Malden, Carol Baker, Eli Wallach, George Papard. While some critics praised the film's epic ambitions, others were considerably less kind. The New York Times said the film stitched together a mammoth patchwork of Western fiction cliches with little or no imagination and indeed no pictorial style. If there was a lack of a consistent style throughout, there is an explanation. 3 directors brought these massive Cinerama sequences to life: Henry Hathaway, George Marshall, and John Ford, each charged with pushing the boundaries of the new technology. They did as tasked, each putting the large and bulky Cinerama camera on runaway chuck wagons, on rafts moving through raging rapids, and in the middle of a buffalo stampede. Ford directed the Civil War sequence, Marshall the railroad segment, and Hathaway covered the rest, with some uncredited work by director Richard Thorpe. We're showing it tonight in the Smile Box format, which recreates the curved Cinerama screen experience on modern flat-screen televisions. From MGM in 1962, narrated by Spencer Tracy, How the West Was Won.